Hey guys, Paul here, and I'm about to kick off a queen size bed for my daughter Grace. I'm going to build it out of walnut. Making large furniture is my favorite thing to do by far in the shop, so this is always a fun time kicking off a project like this. So as far as the design goes, I've worked through with Grace and her partner on SketchUp design, and I'll share that file with you if you want. You can contact me at social media. Facebook or Instagram, and I'll be glad to send that out if you're at all interested. I am going to use a support system from IKEA. They have two options, basic and maybe advanced or upgraded. I went with the upgraded one. They're still pretty cheap. I think 120 bucks or something like that. So we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to basically try to build the bed with the specs of that in mind so that it fits appropriately. So I'll give you links to that and everything else that I use. I'm using the bed rail system from Rockler. At least as of this moment, that's what I'm planning to use. I've used that in the past. It works pretty well. Part of me wants to do something a little bit more robust, but this is simple for disassembling, moving. My daughter's young and will likely move a few times more in her lifetime, so I thought I would just kind of go the easier route for her on that. And it's fine. I've built several beds using that before, and I've found them to be more than adequate for the task. So here we go. All right, I have all the posts now cut to size, machined, and labeled as to their relative to position in the overall bed design. And now what I'm going to do is cut a mortise in each of the legs to receive the recessed bed hardware, the rail attachment hardware. And so I've got this little jig that I made, just really simple, and I'm going to use that along with my router and a collar. And then I've got a spiral bit mounted, ready to go, and I'm going to just plow out the mortises to receive those, the bed hardware. Next, I'm going to route these pockets that will receive the hooks on the bed rails. I'll be removing about 5/8 inch material, and so I've got the plunge router set up to do that in 2 steps. All right, I got the upper and lower rails planed and cut to width. Now I'm gonna mill a groove, 1/4 inch wide and about 3/8 inch deep. And I'm gonna do it on the bottom of this one and the top of this one. So I'm gonna just rough mark them really good. So when I get up to the table saw, I'll keep it all straight. All right, I've got just a regular rip blade set up in here. And then I've got a feather board set up, so I'm going to keep pressure and force the board up against the fence. And what I'm going to do is run it through and then flip it end for end. And I'm going to run it through again. So guess what that's going to do? It's going to center that groove exactly in the middle. And if I measured it right, which I already know that I did because I ran some scrap through to test it, which is a good idea, it's going to be perfectly centered. so that's perfectly centered and just a little snug on the 1/4 inch, but it's definitely going to work. All right, I got all the pieces rough cut for the footboard. I've got the upper and lower rail grooved, the 1/4 inch groove, and now I'm going to do some tongue and groove joinery on the vertical pieces. So I've cut the center piece and the left and right pieces. I've left them a little bit thicker, so it's going to give a little bit of a textured or recessed feel for the other vertical pieces. I'm going to get it all glued up, cut them flush on each edge, and then cut some joinery into the ends and then into the posts. So I'm not sure exactly how these are going to end up, so I've left this a little bit long on each end, and I'm going to just rip the whole thing flush, make it a single glued up unit. I'm going to allow these pieces to float, so tongue and groove, and I'm going to leave a little bit of space in there so they can expand and contract so I don't get any cracking. So that is the plan. And now I'm going to just take a block plane to put a slight chamfer on each of the 4 corners on the sides of these panels. I'm not going to do the top and bottom edges. All right, I'm about ready to glue up the panel for the footboard, and I just wanted to show you the setup before I get into the actual gluing process. It's really important to go through this in a dry run and make sure you've got everything all set up properly. So first of all, you see these spacers in place. So I used a wood calculator online, and I'll give you a link to that below. And that determined that because I'm using black walnut, this is a panel that is, if I glued everything solidly, this would likely explode over time. It would crack due to expansion or contraction. So this calculator said that I needed a total of about a 32nd of an inch per gap. I went just about a 1/16 of an inch just to give me a little bit extra comfort. I really don't want this to crack. And so I've got these spacers set up. I'm going to glue solidly the end pieces and the middle piece, and everything else I'm going to put just a dab of glue so that they're not rattling or moving. I want to keep that spacing consistent. I'm going to have clamps obviously to the top and bottom to pull these rails in tightly, but I also have this clamp set up, double bar clamp with a coupler. That's a nice trick. Those are, just $1 or $2 or whatever at a home center, and you can turn into whatever length clamp you need. So that's going to pull everything tight and ensure that the spaces are consistent. The only other thing that I wanted to share is I'm going to use white glue, Elmer's all-purpose or multi-purpose glue-all for this. I've tested many different PVA glues. This has the longest by far open assembly time. So this panel has 30 joints in it. That's a lot. So the long extended assembly time is going to allow me to glue this up without fear or concern about it. The glue grabbing before I have a chance to get everything set just right. So with that, wish me luck as I start this glue up. All right, I'm ready to go on my assembly of the headboard. And I'm going to do it just slightly different than the footboard. I'm going to assemble with everything laying flat on the bench and insert the spacers as I go. I found it very difficult to manipulate some of the slats when I did the footboard, and so I've done a dry run on this. It works much better that way. So everything is all ready to go, laid out. One thing that I didn't point out last time, and maybe you noticed, I'm working from the center out rather than right to left or left to right. And I've got a center line marked, and so I'm going to make sure that I've got the center slat, which is larger, lined up perfectly on that center line, and then I'm going to work outward from there, and that will help me just get it centered on these planks perfectly rather than having to panic at the end. So here we go. I'm going to cut the headboard and footboard panels square at the ends. You can see I left them a little bit long here. That just made it easier to lay it out. I'm going to cut them to the exact length. So first I'm going to square up one end, then I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to leave this same edge against the fence on my panel sled, and then I'm going to use my template to measure the exact length. I'll use this on the headboard and the footboard so they come out the same. All right, it's time to mill joinery in the headboard panels and posts. I'm going to use a domino for this. If you have one, this is definitely a great way to go. If you don't have one, no worries. Lots of different ways you can use to do this. You could use biscuits, splines, tongue and groove joint, kind of stub tenon on here. So just go with whatever you have, and pretty simple joinery. Now I'm going to just draw some lines to mark for a taper that I'm going to take from full width at the bottom, and I'm going to taper it up to 3/4 of an inch less at the top. And I'm going to do this on all 4 posts, making sure that I'm cutting the outside and not the inside where my joinery is. All right, now over at the router table, I've got a 45-degree chamfer bit installed, and I'm just adding a nice chamfer detail, about 1/4 inch across to all 4 sides of the posts, and I'm leaving it about 1 inch shy at the top and the bottom. All right, it's time to mill the recesses on the end of the rails for the bed rail hardware. And so I've done some test cuts to get the fit just right. I took the jig that I used in the previous round where I milled into the posts, and now I've adjusted it by adding these I call them fences that will help clamp it and just lock it exactly into the correct position to mill the recess into the ends of the rail. Now what I have found is that the fit, the depth is really super critical. So I've done a couple test cuts now and I've got it set with my router set up to the perfect depth. So what you want to get is a fit where it locks in with just a little bit of pressure and it's just not loose at all. Very snug fit. All right, I've got things kind of dry fit together just to make sure that I've sized everything correctly. And it looks pretty good. I've got the support cleats just in place, being held with a few screws, no glue yet. Just want to make sure I've got the height set properly on all these things. I've got support pieces clamped in on the headboard and footboard. And everything looks good. This gives me an idea of how far out my supports are going to come because I need support in the middle for this IKEA frame. So I get an idea on that, and then I also need to come up with something that will support this through the middle. All right, I cut these legs to length, left them 1 inch shorter than the distance between the bottom of this cross member and the floor, and added these leveling feet to deal with any unevenness in the floor. And I'm just going to attach each one of these using a domino. All right, here you can see it now with everything in place. I've got the IKEA platform support in place. I've got the center line platform support in place, and everything else is just fitting perfectly. And so I'm going to take it all apart, sand it a little bit more, and get ready for some finish. All right, that about wraps this one up. I tell you, I feel really good about how this turned out. This is the 4th bed that I've built. It's been many years since I've built one though, and I just feel like this is hands down my favorite of the bunch. I think it's very solid. Even with the bed rail hardware, I feel like it's very substantial. I like how the center beam support mechanism down the middle of the bed works. I love that IKEA system, sort of a box spring substitute. I like that a lot, and I think that it came together. The supporting mechanism that I've built here. I like how the Minwax poly worked well. I sprayed that on. And I think just overall, I'm going to do a couple more videos related to this bed. One, just kind of a recap, lessons learned, and a few tips that I would recommend along the way. And then this texture on the corner posts, I'm going to show you in a separate video how I did that, just because it's a separate process and I didn't want to disrupt the flow of building this bed. I figure this video will probably be long enough. But feel free to ask any questions down below. Happy to answer anything that I can, and hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you'll give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Come back for more. I do a lot of woodworking, wood turning, and some DIY related videos. Thanks again for watching.